Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today. Usually when we analyze construction contracts, we're looking at how the client controls the project.
Right.
You know the drill, the employer has the money, so the employer calls the shots. The assumption is always that the power dynamic flows one way.
Downhill.
Oh.
Straight onto the contractor. It's the classic
Yeah.
golden rule, right? He who has the gold makes the rules. Or, well, that's the perception anyway.
Precisely. But today, we are flipping that. We're looking at the scenario where David fires Goliath. We're digging into the FIDIC Red Book 2017, specifically Clause 16, which is all about suspension and termination by the contractor. Basically what happens when the builder says, I'm done, I'm walking away, and you're going to pay me for it.
It is, well, it's one of the most explosive sections of the Red Book. It's often ignored during that honeymoon phase of a project, you know.
The handshakes and the photo ops.
Exactly. But when things go wrong, Clause 16 is often the only thing standing between a contractor and, frankly, total bankruptcy. It's the mechanism that lets them stop the bleeding.
So it's not just about quitting. It sounds more like a weapon, a way to force the client to behave.
Absolutely. It's a leverage tool.
That.
But, and this is a huge but, it is a procedural minefield.
Oh, so?
If a contractor walks off the job without following Clause 16 to the letter, they aren't terminating for cause. They're abandoning the works.
Oh.
And legally, that turns them from the victim into the villain. You can go from being owed millions to owing millions just by missing a deadline by, say, 24 hours.
That is terrifying. Okay, so our mission today is to unpack exactly how that leverage works so no one steps on a mine. We need to understand the triggers, the timelines, the money.
The whole sequence.
Let's do it chronologically. Let's imagine a project that's starting to wobble. Checks are late. The contractor is getting nervous. They're not ready to quit, but they need to stop things.
Yeah.
This brings us to subclause 16.1, suspension by contractor.
Right. Suspension is your warning shot. It's a tactical pause. You aren't ending the contract. You're saying, I'm not spending another dollar on this site until you fix your issues.
And what actually triggers this? I'm guessing the biggest one is just not getting paid.
Money is the main driver, yes.
Oh.
Under 16.1, you've got a couple of key financial triggers. First, if the engineer fails to certify a payment. So you've done the work, you've submitted your statement, and the engineer just sits on it.
So the paperwork is stalled.
The paperwork is stalled. The second one is when the paperwork is fine, the engineer certifies it, but the employer just doesn't transfer the funds on time.
Okay, straightforward enough. No pay, no work. But I'm looking at the text, and there's a third trigger here that seems way more proactive. It references subclause 2.4, employer's financial arrangements.
Ah, yes, the show me the money clause.
Explain that. It sounds like I can just demand to see the client's bank account.
Well, almost. The contractor has the right to request reasonable evidence that the employer has the financial arrangements in place to pay the full contract price.
So if rumors are swirling that the client's running out of cash,
Or their main investor pulled out, yeah. The contractor can formally ask, prove to me you can still afford this.
but hold on, that feels incredibly subjective. What on earth counts as reasonable evidence? If a client sends a letter from their bank saying, we're considering a loan, is that enough?
And that is exactly where the disputes happen. It is very gray. A comfort letter is not cash. So if the employer fails to provide solid evidence or just ignores the request, that is a valid ground for suspension.
It lets the contractor stop before they dig themselves into a huge financial hole.
Exactly. It shifts the risk. You don't have to wait until the check actually bounces.
Okay, so let's play this out. The employer hasn't paid. The contractor is angry. Can they just blow a whistle and send everyone home that afternoon?
Absolutely not. That is how you get sued for delay damages.
Yeah.
FIDIC is obsessed with notices. You have to give a formal notice saying exactly what the default is. And then, this is crucial, you have to wait. The text says you may suspend work not less than 21 days after giving a notice.
3 weeks. That seems like a lifetime if you're not getting paid. You have to keep paying your workers, renting equipment, burning cash for 3 weeks, knowing the client is in breach.
It's a painful balance of risk. The contract wants to save the project, you see. That 21-day buffer gives the employer a chance to scramble, find the cash, fix the breach. If they pay up on day 20, the suspension never happens.
Wow.
You just have to keep working.
But if day 21 comes and goes, still no money.
Then you can suspend. You can suspend the whole works or, and this is a smart strategic option, you can reduce the rate of work.
A slowdown.
Yes. Keep a skeleton crew. Slow everything to a crawl. It keeps the site alive so you don't have to fully demobilize, but it slashes your daily costs.
Okay, and while I'm sitting there with my cranes idle, am I just losing money because just keeping a site open isn't free?
No, and the contract protects you there. If you suspend properly under 16.1, you get an extension of time for the delay. But more importantly, you get paid cost plus profit.
We see that phrase, cost plus profit, all the time. Let's define it, because it sounds like a nice little bonus.
It's not just a bonus, it's a safeguard. Cost in FIDIAS means all expenditure reasonably incurred. Site overheads, security, insurance, equipment rental,
Everything.
everything. Plus profit means you add your standard margin on top of that, which is usually defined in the contract data. Maybe 5%, maybe 10%.
So even though you aren't building anything, you are effectively earning profit on the idle time.
Exactly. Plus interest.
Interest?
Oh yeah, financing charges, so the meter is running. Costs, profit, and interest. It becomes very, very expensive for an employer to ignore a suspension. It turns the site into a taxi with the meter running while the passenger is inside the bank trying to get a loan.
That's a fantastic visual. Okay, so suspension is the pressure tactic, the warning shot. But let's say the employer is just broke. The suspension has dragged on, the contractor needs out. We're moving from 16.1 to 16.2.
The divorce. This is the point of no return. Termination by contractor.
And the triggers for termination look like, well, they look like escalated versions of the suspension triggers. It feels like a timeline of failure.
It's a progression.
Yeah.
Let's take that financial evidence one again. You asked for proof of funds.
Yeah.
They didn't give it. You suspended after 21 days.
Right.
If you still haven't received that evidence 42 days after giving that first notice, you can move to terminate.
So 21 days to suspend plus another 42 days of suspension. We're talking about 2 months of just waiting.
Correct. And you're in limbo that whole time.
There's also this silent engineer trigger.
Right. If the engineer fails to issue a payment certificate for 56 days, that's 8 weeks, after you submit your statement, you can terminate.
56 days. That seems incredibly generous to the engineer. Why so long?
Because the engineer is supposed to be the neutral administrator. FIDIC assumes that if a certificate is delayed, there might be a genuine dispute, a real paperwork issue. It gives a huge buffer to sort it out before blowing up the whole contract.
Fair enough. And then my favorite, the ghost project scenario.
Yes. This is when you win the bid, sign the contract, get the letter of acceptance, and then crickets. Nothing. If you don't receive a notice of commencement date within 84 days, you can terminate.
Nearly 3 months. That must be to protect the contractor from just holding resources and crews for a job that never starts.
Precisely. You can't keep your business on hold forever.
Now, here's where I get a bit confused. Let's say we hit that 42-day mark on a late payment. Can I terminate immediately? Just send a letter saying, it's been 42 days, goodbye?
No. And this is where so many contractors get tripped up. For most of these breaches, late payment, no proof of funds, there is another notice period. You have to serve a notice of intention to terminate.
A warning shot after the warning shot.
Yes. The contract is just desperate to keep the marriage together. You serve the notice of intention, and the employer then has 14 days to fix the problem.
So let's do the math on that show me the money scenario. You wait 21 days, then you wait 42 days. Then you give a notice and you wait another 14 days. We're at, what, 77 days before you can actually walk?
That is the reality of it. Unwinding these massive projects is a disaster for everyone, so the Red Book forces patience. If the employer pays on day 13 of that final notice period,
Termination is off. You have to go back to work.
you have to go back. It's frustrating, I know. But remember, the contractor is getting paid cost plus profit for all that waiting time. It's not charity.
However, I'm seeing exceptions in the text. There are some triggers in 16.2 that don't require this 14-day patience. Some things are so bad you can terminate immediately.
Yes, these are the immediate termination triggers, the cardinal sins, where the relationship is just, irretrievably broken.
What are they?
The biggest one is insolvency. If the employer goes bankrupt, enters liquidation, has a receiver appointed.
Makes sense. Waiting 14 days for a bankrupt company to find money is pointless.
Exactly. The money is gone. The contract just recognizes reality. The second immediate trigger is corruption. If the employer is found to have engaged in corrupt, fraudulent, or collusive practices.
Zero tolerance.
Correct. If the relationship is built on fraud, you can end it. You send the notice, and the contract ends the moment they get it. No cure period.
And there's one about assignment, too.
Right. You contracted with Company A. If Company A tries to sell the contract to Company B without your agreement, you can terminate immediately. You can't be forced to work for a boss you didn't hire.
Okay, so the contract is terminated. Now we have to clean up the mess. Subclause 16.3, the aftermath.
First rule, cease all work. Stop digging. Stop pouring concrete. You are no longer authorized to build.
But there is a safety exception, right? You can't just leave a deep pit unfenced next to a school.
Correct. You must complete any work instructed by the engineer for the protection of life or property. And importantly, you get paid for that safety work. You have a duty of care, but you don't do it for free.
Then comes the handover. This feels like moving out of an apartment. Give back the keys, the drawings.
And the materials. But this is a huge leverage point I want to highlight. Subclause 16.3 says you deliver materials and plant for which the contractor has received payment.
Wait, say that again. So if there's a pile of expensive steel beams on site, but the employer hasn't paid that invoice yet.
You keep them. They are your property. You can load them back onto your trucks and take them away.
That is massive leverage. You want the steel to finish the job, pay the invoice.
Exactly. The employer doesn't get to keep goods they haven't bought. It often forces a much quicker settlement.
Okay, now the payout. The contractor has left. What are they owed? This is subclause 16.4. And this seems to be where the employer really gets punished.
Oh, it's a financial disaster for the employer. Obviously, They have to pay for all work done to date. Standard stuff. They pay for the safety work. They pay for demobilization, shipping cranes back, ending subcontracts.
But there is one phrase in here that changes everything. Loss of profit.
This is the killer. The clause says the employer must pay the amount of any loss of profit or other losses and damages suffered by the contractor as a result of this termination.
Explain what that means in practice, if I was halfway through a 4-year project.
In legal terms, we call this expectation damages. You entered the contract with the expectation of making, say, a $10 million profit over 4 years. The employer's breach stopped you from earning that. Therefore, the employer has to pay you that profit as if you'd finished the job.
So I get paid the profit for the building I didn't build.
Yes, because it wasn't your fault you didn't build it.
Huh.
The employer is paying for your opportunity cost. You set aside resources for this job, you missed out on other jobs, so you get the profit you were promised.
That means the employer pays the full price of the mistake. They've got a half-finished building, they have to hire a new contractor, probably at a higher price, and they have to pay you the profit you would have made anyway.
It is the ultimate deterrent. It's why a smart employer will move heaven and earth to avoid a Clause 16 termination. It's almost always cheaper to borrow money at high interest rates than to trigger this.
And yet, I bet contractors are often scared to pull the trigger.
They are.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because of what we said at the start. If you terminate, and then a court decides later that the breach wasn't material, or you sent the notice 1 day too early.
Then you're the one in breach.
Exactly. It flips completely. Then you're paying the employer for their losses, the cost of a new contractor, delay damages. That's why this is the nuclear option. You don't use it unless you are 100% sure your paperwork is perfect.
So if we distill this down, Clause 16 is a shield, but it's a heavy one.
And knowledge is the strength here. You have to know the timelines. 21 days, 42 days, 14 days. If you follow the recipe, it guarantees a bad client cannot bankrupt your business.
And for the client, the lesson is transparency.
Transparency and cash flow. If you can't pay, admit it. Negotiate. Don't force the contractor to use Clause 16 because you're going to lose a lot more than just the monthly invoice.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to that reasonable evidence of funds. It just sticks in my head because, well, what is money anymore?
That is the question of the decade for construction law.
Seriously, if a developer shows you a portfolio of NFTs or a screenshot of a crypto wallet as proof of funds for a skyscraper, does that count?
I would love to see a dispute board rule on that. I hope they'd say no given the volatility.
Yeah.
But the contract doesn't say cash in a Tier 1 bank. It just says reasonable evidence.
Which means reasonable changes with the times.
It does. But my advice, stick to traditional banking evidence if you want to sleep at night.
A brave new world. Read your contracts, folks.
And keep your notices ready.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.